People have long been captivated by orchids, but fascination with these unique and beautiful plants has resulted in overcollecting. That, along with development and habitat loss, has made them among the world's most threatened species. Orchids are more at risk than some other species, in part because of the symbiotic relationship they require in order to survive. In the 1930s, in an effort to preserve critical orchid habitats in Door County, a group of citizens and scientists worked together to first preserve the land that became the Ridges Sanctuary, and later the adjacent homestead that would become UW-Green Bay's Toft Point Natural Area. The same desire to preserve Door County's orchids continues today as UW-Green Bay mycologist and conservation biologist Dr. Lisa Grubisha and her students continue research that will help us to better understand the genetics and complex ecology of these species. Students Makayla and Rebecca both received Cofrin research grants from UW-Green Bay's Center for Biodiversity to study orchids at Toft Point and the Ridges. Cofrin grants allow students to do independent research of any of UW-Green Bay's 6 natural areas. Together, they are collecting samples of root tissue of striped coral root to take back to UW-GB, where Dr. Grubisha is teaching them how to isolate DNA and measure genetic diversity in orchids, and also how to grow the symbiotic mycorrhizal fungi that are attached to the orchid roots so that they can be identified. With a grant from the 1923 fund, Dr. Grubisha is collaborating with scientists at the Ridges Sanctuary and the Smithsonian Ecological Research Center to better understand the population genetics and ecology of as many Door County orchids as possible. Their work will allow conservation biologists and land managers to preserve existing populations and develop better methods to restore threatened populations.
So symbiosis can be mutual where both benefit, one can just benefit, it depends. And mycorrhizae is a symbiosis that occurs between plants and fungi. And in terms of orchids, that's really important because orchids have really small seeds and they don't have enough nutrients on their own to germinate. So that's why they need to form this symbiosis with mycorrhizal fungi so that they can get necessary nutrients to germinate, such as carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other micronutrients.
A coral root is a type of orchid, and it is an orchid that does not have any leaves, and in respect to that, it doesn't photosynthesize. Takes a minute to find. There it is. So, because it doesn't do photosynthesis, it is completely reliant on a symbiotic mycorrhizae to get its nutrients. And this mycorrhizae is often connected to a pine tree, and they kind of get nutrients from that pine tree so that they can survive even though they don't photosynthesize. Those feel like empty seed pods. So we're looking mostly at the genetic diversity of these coral root orchids. Genetic diversity is if you're looking at a population of coral roots, you want them to have differences in their alleles, and this then means that they'll be able to adapt better to changes in the environment. So populations that are going to have a higher genetic diversity are going to be able to adapt better to environmental changes, while populations with low genetic diversity aren't going to be able to adapt as well, and they might not be able to fit the environmental changes that happen and not survive and prosper as well as ones with higher genetic diversity. This is where the extinction vortex comes in.
We should quick define that. So genetic diversity is important because populations with low genetic diversity suffer from inbreeding depression, which results in lower viable offspring in future generations, which results in a smaller population size in the next generation. And again, it kind of cycles. So you have a small population with low genetic diversity, and over time that population just becomes smaller and smaller, and the genetic diversity becomes less and less, and so it's kind of like a vortex spiraling down. Whereas when you have populations that have higher levels of genetic diversity, they don't suffer from inbreeding depression, and they don't get caught in the extinction vortex.
And this one has already gone to seed, so you can see the little pockets here, and those are all filled with seeds.
And at Toft Point, they're spread out enough that you really hope to see genetic diversity. They're not all like clustered in the same location.
So we have taken different plants from different areas of Toft Points. They're spread out enough, and we're going to compare their DNA, and we're also going to compare them to DNA found at the Ridges Sanctuary, and looking for differences. If there's more differences in the DNA, that means there's going to be higher genetic diversity.
It's not good. If it's low genetic diversity, that's not very good for just preserving that population.
Yeah, I mean, in the world currently, a lot is changing. So even in Door County, there's been intense changes, and there's been changes in the climate and everything, and we want to be able to see that these populations have a high genetic diversity, because that means that they do have a better chance of surviving. And that's what will help with preservation in the future.
For more information on Cofrin research grants, visit www.uwgb.edu/biodiversity.
Cool.